you got paid. And for about 48 hours, things felt fine. The balance looked good. You felt briefly like maybe this month would be different. Then Wednesday happened, then the weekend, then a few things you didn't plan for. And now it's 2 weeks before your next paycheck, and you're doing the math in your head and wondering again where it all went. Not to anything dramatic, not to a vacation or a shopping spree or some obvious overspend you could point to and say, there, that's the problem. Your hard-earned money just gone, quietly, in every direction at once. Here's what almost nobody in personal finance will say directly. The reason your paycheck disappears isn't that you spend too much. It's that you have 7 specific habits, most of them invisible, none of them dramatic, that drain money in ways that don't register as spending decisions. They feel like life. They feel normal. They feel, in some cases, completely deserved. And that's exactly what makes them so expensive. I'm going to name all 7. Not to make you feel bad about them, but because you cannot fix what you haven't named. And once you name these, you'll start seeing them everywhere. In your accounts, in your decisions, in the gap between what you earned and what you kept. Stay through all 7. The last one is the one nobody wants to say out loud, and it's probably the most expensive one operating in your life right now. And first, why does a paycheck disappear so fast even when you're not doing anything obviously wrong? Because most of the drain doesn't come from big, visible purchases. It comes from 7 behavioral patterns that hide in plain sight. Here's each one. Habit number 1, the recency illusion. There's something that happens to your brain the moment a paycheck hits your account. It resets, not consciously, not as a decision, but neurologically. A fresh balance triggers what behavioral economists call the recency illusion. Your brain treats new money as abundant, not finite. The anxiety of the final days before payday disappears. The scarcity feeling lifts. And for a window of 24 to 72 hours, your spending decisions are made from a psychological state of relative abundance, even if the actual math hasn't changed at all. This is why the first week after payday is, for most people, their highest spending window of the month. Not because they consciously decide to spend more, because the brain interprets a full account as permission. I want you to think about your own pattern for a second. The meals out, the online orders, the "I've been waiting to buy this" purchases, when do most of them happen? Probably in the days immediately following payday. Not because you planned it that way, because the illusion of abundance is strongest right then. That said, let me help you get that fix. The fix is just a single habit. Before you spend $1 of any paycheck, calculate and move your committed amounts first. Savings transfer, debt payment, bills, all of it goes before you touch the balance for discretionary spending. What's left is yours. But you calculate the real number first, before the recency illusion spends it for you. The recency illusion isn't a character flaw. It's a factory setting. Your brain evolved in an environment where a sudden abundance of resources, food, water, shelter, meant you should use them before they disappeared. That instinct made sense 10,000 years ago. Applied to a paycheck in a modern consumer economy, it's expensive. So, you want to know the window. Protect the window. Move the money before the illusion does. The recency illusion hits you once a month. But the next habit, it's hitting you every single day in amounts. And it is so small your brain doesn't even classify them as spending. Add them up, and the number will shock you. Habit number 2. The invisible daily spend. Before we dive deep, here is a quick question for you. How much did you spend yesterday? Not a rough guess. The actual number across every transaction, including the ones under $15. Please comment below. Honestly, I know most people can't answer that. And that's not carelessness. It's cognitive design. The thing is, the human brain has a filter that decides what counts as a spending event worth registering. Big purchases clear that filter easily. A $200 bill, a $150 grocery run, a $90 tank of gas. Those feel like spending. But a $4 coffee, a $7 lunch add-on, A $3 app purchase, a $9 impulse snack at a gas station, a $12 delivery fee, those don't clear the filter. They don't feel like spending decisions. They feel like living. And so the brain doesn't log them, doesn't add them up, doesn't register the cumulative damage. Here's what the math says when you do add them up. 5 sub-$15 purchases a day, an amount that would feel like I barely spent anything to most people. Totals between $150 and $300 a week, depending on the amounts. That's $600 to $1,200 a month. That's $7,200 to $14,400 a year. From purchases, the brain didn't even register as real spending. The fix isn't eliminating all small purchases, it's making the invisible visible. For 1 week, I mean just 1 week, I want you to log every single transaction the moment it happens. Everyone, including the $2 ones. Do not wait until the end of the day. Log it in real time. What happens within 24 to 48 hours is almost universal. The act of logging changes the behavior. Not because you're restricting yourself, because awareness interrupts the automatic pattern. A purchase you would have made without thinking suddenly gets 1 second of conscious attention and a meaningful percentage of the time. That 1 second is enough to change the decision. The invisible daily spend is the single largest discretionary spending category for most people and the least examined. It doesn't show up dramatically on any bank statement because no single transaction is notable. It hides in the aggregate, which is exactly why tracking it, even briefly, is one of the highest leverage financial habits available to anyone at any income level. You don't have to do it forever. Do it for 1 week. See the number. You won't unsee it. The invisible daily spend hides in small decisions. But the next habit is sneakier because it disguises itself as something you completely deserve. And that's what makes it almost impossible to catch. Habit number 3. The treat yourself. Tax. You spent a hard week at work. Stressful month. You've been disciplined. You've said no to things. And now there's something you want. Dinner out, new shoes, a gadget, a splurge on something that costs more than it should. And the thought that follows is, I've earned this. That thought is not irrational. After real effort, reward-seeking behavior is neurologically normal. Dopamine literally motivates us by promising a reward at the end of sustained work. The problem isn't wanting to treat yourself. The problem is that I've earned this functions as a spending override. It bypasses your normal decision-making and reclassifies the purchase as justified before you've even examined the cost. The treat yourself tax is the cumulative monthly cost of purchases made specifically from the feeling of deserving a reward. For most people, this runs between $100 and $400 a month, not in one big moment, but in a series of individually justified decisions across the month. The defense isn't self-denial. It's a 24-hour rule applied specifically to treat yourself purchases. When the I've earned this feeling fires, acknowledge it genuinely because you probably have, and then wait 24 hours before acting on it. Not 48, just 24. What happens in those 24 hours is important. The emotional intensity of the reward-seeking moment fades. The purchase either still makes sense the next day, in which case you buy it, guilt-free, or it was primarily the feeling of the moment driving it, in which case it doesn't. Research from consumer psychology consistently shows that the desire to make deserved purchases drops by 40 to 60% when even a minimal delay is introduced. This habit is the hardest to see because it arrives wearing a completely legitimate emotion. You did work hard. You are allowed to enjoy your money. However, the question isn't whether you deserve something, it's whether the thing you're about to buy is actually the thing that will make you feel rewarded, or whether it's just the closest available dopamine hit at the moment. 1 day's delay separates those two things cleanly. We just cover 3 habits now, and all 3 of them are psychological, but the next one is a math error. A specific, incredibly common math error that makes your available balance feel larger than it actually is every single month. Let's look at the next habit. Habit number 4. Mental accounting errors. Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler identified something called mental accounting, the human tendency to treat money differently based on where it came from or what it's mentally labeled as. Even though money itself is fungible, a dollar is a dollar regardless of its source. But your brain doesn't believe that, and it costs you. Here's how this shows up in practice. Tax refund money gets spent faster and on more frivolous things than regular paycheck money, even though it's the same currency, and in fact, it was your money all along, just returned to you late. Bonus money gets treated as extra and spent on upgrades or luxuries, even when carrying high-interest debt that would have been smarter to pay down. Found money, a birthday gift, a freelance payment, or a gambling win gets spent at rates 40 to 60% higher than earned wages, according to research from the Journal of Consumer Research. And the most common version, money sitting in checking, feels available even when it's mentally earmarked for a bill coming in 2 weeks. People spend it, forget the bill is coming, and end up in a shortfall they technically should have predicted. So, what's the way out of this? Well, the fix is a single rule. Treat all money as the same money. When a tax refund hits, a bonus arrives, or any irregular income lands before you do anything with it, run it through the same framework as your regular paycheck. Committed amounts first, savings, debt, bills, spend what's left. The label on the money changes nothing about what it's worth or what it can do. Mental accounting errors are not stupidity. They're a quirk of human psychology that's been replicated across every demographic, every income level, every country studied. It's wiring, not weakness. But once you know the pattern, you can override it because the override is simple. One rule applied uniformly, regardless of where the money came from. That's the math error. The next habit is one most people think they already have handled, but there's a layer to it that almost nobody examines. And it's making your real available balance smaller than you think, every single month. Before we go over the next habit, kindly hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you. Let's move to the next habit. Habit number 5. Phantom subscriptions. I want us to do a quick exercise, and here is the exercise. I want you to ask someone or your friends how many subscriptions they pay for, and they'll give you a number. Ask them to list everyone from memory, and they'll get about 60% of them. A 2023 survey by C+R Research found that the average consumer underestimates their monthly subscription spending by over $100. Not because they're careless, but because subscriptions are specifically designed to be forgettable. Annual billing cycles, free trials that convert automatically, family plans with costs buried in shared accounts, apps with recurring charges that show up as nondescript merchant names on bank statements. But here's the layer that goes beyond the standard cancel your subscriptions advice. Even the subscriptions people know about and keep get mentally reclassified as already spent money, fixed costs, like rent, which means they stop counting them when estimating what's available. The $17.99 streaming service, the $14.99 cloud storage, the $9.99 news app, the $12.99 audiobook credit, none of these feel like available money, so they never get weighed against other spending decisions. The cumulative effect. People spend as though those amounts aren't leaving their account, because mentally they've already left, which creates a phantom balance of an imagined available amount that's consistently $80 to $200 higher than reality. Here's how you can get that fix. Once a quarter, review your bank and credit card statements and specifically search for recurring charges. List them, total them. Then ask 2 questions per item. Did I actively use this in the last 30 days? And does the value I got justify the cost? Cancel what fails both. Downgrade what fails one. The goal isn't to strip your life of convenience. It's to make every recurring charge a conscious reviewed decision rather than a default that persists because canceling requires effort. Subscriptions monetize inertia. The audit is the counter to that. Phantom subscriptions drain quietly. But the next habit is different. It feels like financial responsibility while it's actually costing you hundreds, sometimes thousands, in ways that don't show up until you do the math. Habit number 6, the minimum payment trap. Paying the minimum on a credit card feels like handling it. The due date passes, no late fee, account stays current, nothing bad happened. This registers in the brain as a completed financial task. Well, it is not. Here's the math most credit card statements won't show you clearly. A $3,000 credit card balance at 22% APR paid at the minimum payment rate takes approximately 14 years to pay off. Total interest paid, over $3,800. You paid more than double what you borrowed for things you bought years ago and have probably already forgotten about. Meanwhile, that $3,000 sitting on a card while you also maintain a $3,000 savings account isn't an emergency fund. It's a net loss of 17 to 20% annually, the difference between the savings account yield and the card interest rate. The security feels real. Mathematically, it isn't. The fix is sequencing. Any found money, any extra income, any month where spending comes in under budget and the surplus goes to the highest interest debt first, not to savings and not to spending. Every dollar applied to a 22% card is a guaranteed 22% return. No investment reliably beats that. Clear the high interest debt, then build savings, then invest. The minimum payment trap is insidious because it's dressed up as responsibility. You're paying your bills. You're not defaulting, everything looks fine. But the interest compounds in the background, quietly, month after month, moving money from your future to your creditor's revenue column. The math is fixed. The only variable is when you decide to see it clearly. 6 habits. 5 of them are things you do alone in your own financial life. This last one is different. It involves the people around you, and it's probably the one operating at the highest volume in your life right now, without you realizing it. Habit number 7, the social comparison spend. Human beings are wired for social comparison, not as a flaw, but as a survival mechanism. For most of human history, understanding how your resource levels compared to those around you was critical information. Too far below the group average meant vulnerability. Social comparison kept people calibrated. In a modern consumer economy, that same wiring gets hijacked. And the result is a spending pattern that has almost nothing to do with your actual needs or wants and everything to do with matching signaling and keeping pace with the people around you. Think about the last few purchases you made that were influenced even partially by what someone else had, did, or would think. The restaurant you went to because everyone was going. The item you upgraded because the older version felt embarrassing by comparison. The trip, the outfit, the gadget, the experience chosen, at least partly because of how it would look or feel relative to your social context. None of those decisions happened in a vacuum. They happened inside a social environment that was quietly setting your spending floor. And here's the compounding problem. Social media has expanded that environment infinitely. You're no longer comparing to your immediate peer group of 10 to 20 people. You're comparing to a curated highlight reel of thousands, including people with dramatically higher incomes than you, presenting a lifestyle that looks like the norm because it's optimized to appear that way. The result is a spending floor set by the most visible, most aspirational version of your social environment, which for most people is significantly higher than their income can sustainably support. Let me show you the quick moves you can take to get out of that zone. First, audit your last 30 days of discretionary spending and mark every purchase that had a social component. For example, you bought because someone else had it. Went somewhere because others were going, upgraded because the old version felt like it said something about you. Now you want to total that number. That's your monthly social comparison spend. Second, consciously introduce financial reference points that pull in the opposite direction. A podcast, a community, even one person in your life who is building wealth quietly and talking about it openly. Social proof works in both directions. It can normalize financial discipline just as effectively as it normalizes overspending. You get to choose which direction your reference points pull. This habit is the hardest to name because it implicates other people. It feels awkward to say I spent that money because of social pressure. But it's also the most liberating habit to address because the moment you recognize the mechanism, the spending decision shifts from automatic to conscious. And conscious decisions can be different ones. To wrap up these 7 habits, none of them are dramatic. None of them are the kind of thing that shows up obviously on a bank statement. The recency illusion, spending the money before you've protected it. The invisible daily, spending adds up to hundreds while flying beneath the brain's radar. The treat yourself tax, bypassing every financial guard you have. Mental accounting errors make you feel richer than you are. Phantom subscriptions, create a balance that doesn't exist. The minimum payment trap, running 14-year debt cycles in the background. And social comparison, spending to set your floor at someone else's lifestyle. That's where the money goes, every month, same result. Not because you're reckless, because these 7 patterns are running on autopilot, and autopilot in a consumer economy designed to extract money quietly will always run in the wrong direction. Now we've named all 7, and naming them changes what you can do about them. You don't fix all 7 at once. You pick the one that hit hardest as you were watching. I mean the one where you thought, that's me. That's your highest leverage. Start there, get 1 week of traction, then add the next. The paycheck doesn't have to disappear anymore. It just needs a different set of defaults.